back to my office in staying in with Holly and Susan because it's too cold to go anywhere.
It's in the 20s. It's freezing outside.
It's not as cold as other places. I do understand that because my mom will be quick to post a thing down that says it was like, minus 40 up there today. It's been really cold up there, so I have to give them that. But it's been too cold to go anywhere, so we're staying in. And this episode, we thought we'd talk a little bit about ancestry and, finding your roots and finding your family tree and all of that stuff.
I will confess, I come from a very broken branch tree. My tree has many branches, and frequently they break off and go in odd directions. And there are whole long, big sections of my family I knew nothing about for years. And so for me, when I wrote Carry Her Heart about a mother who gave a child up, and then Hold Her Heart, the sequel, about that daughter coming back and meeting her birth mother, I didn't go through that per se, but it was very autobiographical for me, because those feelings of not knowing exactly where you come from, not knowing the people that you came from, I feel it very strongly. Because there were such large chunks of my family history I had no access to for the longest time. And so every new discovery I find is amazing. And a couple generations back, there was an adoption. And we heard through family stories that the biological father and his wife adopted his illegitimate child. And I don't want to give
back in those days
was done a lot.
Oh God, we keep saying that.
Back
in those days, but it was back then. It was very common.
And so I'm kind of excited when I came over to Susan today, which is why we're having this discussion. I'm like, I think I found proof that the person I thought was the biological mother, I had my hands on an original birth certificate, and I've been doing some digging. And I narrowed it down to two people. One I kind of ruled out just because dates didn't work out. And the one I thought was probably the biological mother, I'm pretty sure is, because in my family tree, the DNA stuff, someone popped up with the same last name, but then when I went and tied in some of the other names I'd found, they all tie to this person. So I think I found this invisible branch, like all of a sudden, and I'm just so excited about it. I can hardly stand it.
So you've actually done the DNA thing.
I did do the DNA thing.
Susan's
Susan will never let her.
No, get a warrant if you want my DNA. I'm not giving you.
Yeah, and I've read about those. Like, they found her stepbrother did this because she had done it.
Right.
If my stepbrother did something that nasty, go ahead and arrest him.
Well, I agree with that, but I don't know. I just. The writer's imagination. Yeah, well, the writer's imagination just keeps going and going and going.
And for me, that writer's imagination
and the lack of trust. Also, I don't trust. I don't trust very easily.
The curiosity got me. Like I don't. People that can look at their family tree and know their family tree.
Which is how mine kind of is. Now, my mom has been looking into the family tree. My aunt, my father's sister has been looking on that side and everything else, and they like it and they're having fun and great. That's wonderful. But to me, I grew up with a very small family, but I knew all of it. It was all a very sort of stable. And there was
right, and I grew up with a very
which doesn't mean
family was our family.
That doesn't mean I don't know. There are secrets in the closet. There might be.
There are always skeletons, but it has been fascinating digging through. And we found one of the coolest things I found out was when we drive out to the cottage. It's about a 40-45 minute drive, depending on they put in some more lights. It used to be quicker. It did.
Lights
I know. Leading up to the country, so and depending on the time of the day, I can still make it in just over a half hour, but it's got to be in a weird off hour. But there is an area we drive by right before we get to the cottage, maybe a mile or two from our camp, that I've driven by now for decades. It's the route I tend to take to the cottage. It's the only one I know and don't get lost on. So I take this one when I drive myself every time. I found out that this is my family's homestead. Within spitting distance of the 18 acres I bought. I found that amazing that this little town I drive through that they were there at its inception, that they had, it's a small town, but power in the small town, but they had positions of power.
Aha!
And I know. My ideals of grandeur now show up for what they are. But fascinating. I find this so fascinating. I can't even begin to describe it, but really a lot of it comes from, I think, spending a lot of my night not knowing those family stories, that family history. And I found out, like, I'm a very northern girl. I found out there's an entire branch of deep southern roots in my family tree that I didn't even know about. And that, like, here, pre-Revolutionary War roots down south. And so one of the mountains in the Appalachians was known by my family's surname for a long time, and I found references of it in books. It's no longer called that, but cool. So I love doing it, and I make myself only do it every few years because I can get lost in the minutia of it. And as a writer, I love the stories.
Well, see, okay, I could see that. I could very easily see that.
Some of my northern family came from up near Massachusetts, and I found records of them as they moved from there to Pennsylvania. And then I found records of one of them who got drunk and froze to death. And I called my mom all excited. I'm like, I found one of your relatives, and he froze to death. She goes, what do you mean? I said, he was drunk and he passed out and he froze to death. She goes, Holly, why do you only come up with really bad stories about my family? I said, there's some cool people too, Mom, but this one, drunk, froze to death. She was not as impressed as I was with this story.
Shocking. I'm shocked that she didn't enjoy that story.
I feel bad for him in retrospect, your ancestor. I'm sorry.
So tell us down in the comments, are you a big fan of searching for your roots and doing the whole ancestry thing? And how about the DNA thing? Have you done a DNA? See, the other thing with the DNA kit is that it tells you where your DNA can be found in the world today. Because that's all they have.
Right.
Like, they don't have DNA records from back in the old days.
Back in the old days.
Which we keep saying.
Back in the old days.
But yes. So it can only tell you where your DNA is found now, not necessarily really what your DNA is. And the other thing is, the more people who give them their DNA, your things can change.
They did recently on mine.
You watch this and you go, oh, I'm a this, and then it turns out you weren't really a that. You were this other thing. So, but tell us in the comments, have you done the DNA thing? Was it interesting? Did you
get geek glee out of it like I do?
Did it make for some uncomfortable questions in your family when it came out? Because that could happen too.
Sure it could.
I read stories. Anyway, we do love stories. We're running over. We'll catch you next time.
Oh, way over this time. Bye.